Okay, so I'm going to talk about some common terms that we usually use when we're discussing circles. The first is actually the term circle. So a circle is a set of all points that are the same distance or equidistant from the center point. So if I have this is a circle here, I have a point in the center, and all these other points that make up the circle, that lie on the circle, they are the same distance away from that center point. They're equidistant. So that makes a circle. So we also just talked about another term, which is the center. I'm just going to call this center point C. So that's the center. Okay, so radius. Radius, I'm sure you've heard before, but this is a refresher. Radius is the distance from the center to the points on the circle. So I can draw a radius right there. That's the radius. We usually use R. And I'll just call that point B on the circle. But I could put points anywhere along the circle and draw more radii, okay, the plural of radius. So I could call that A, let's say. So segment AC and segment BC, they are both a radius of the circle, or radii of the circle. Next, diameter. So a diameter is a line segment drawn through the center of the circle with both endpoints on the circle. It has length twice the size of the radius. So if I take this radius and I just extend it and I go completely to the other side and I put the other endpoint there, let's just call that X, then XB, segment XB, is a diameter. It is twice the length of the radius, and it has endpoints that are on the circle and goes through the center. So that's the diameter. Circumference. So circumference means if I were to walk around the circle, when I'm walking around the circle, I'm walking around its perimeter, which is the distance around the circle. That's called the circumference. Okay, so that's circumference, meaning going around the circle. The notation. So when I am naming a circle, we use the circle symbol with a dot in the center, and then the letter that we use is the center of the circle. So this is just an example. With this, we would read this as circle G, meaning that is a circle that has G in the center. Well, our circle, if we go back up to our picture here, our circle has C in the center. So we would name our circle circle C. And that indicates not only that it's a circle, but that the center of the circle is point C. Okay, so the circumference formula. Circumference formula you learned before. I'm just refreshing your memory. Circumference formula is 2 times pi times the radius, or we sometimes think of that as diameter times pi. Diameter is 2 times the radius. We said that before. So if I take 2 times the radius, I get the diameter. Diameter times pi is the circumference. The area formula. Area is pi r squared. Okay, moving on. So some more terminology that we need to discuss. So a central angle is an angle whose vertex is at the center of the circle. So looking at this diagram, we can see that O is the center. So we would name this circle O. The central angle, it is what it sounds like. Central sounds like center. Its vertex is the center of the circle. So one central angle of this circle would be angle AOB. Angle AOB is a central angle. because it has its vertex on the center of the circle. Another central angle would be angle XOA. Angle XOA is also a central angle. Okay, arc. Arc is a part of the circle. So if I highlight, I'll just highlight right here. If we're thinking of this circle as almost like a pie or a pizza, the arc would be the crust, okay, of the circle. So the arc that I just highlighted there, this particular arc is only part of the whole circle, but that particular part that I highlighted is called an arc. And the way that we would label that arc, I would call that arc AX, and I would use the little arc symbol. That's the symbol that we use to indicate an arc. Okay, now arcs have two different things. They have measures and they have lengths. And we'll talk more about both of those as we go on. But for right now, what you need to know is that if I went all the way around the circle, like the whole entire pizza crust, that measure, or in other words, the angles that are used to create that circle, would have 360 degrees all the way around. So the measure of a circle is 360 degrees because the arc all the way around, the arc's measure is 360 degrees. Now length. Again, we'll talk about arc length in more detail later, but for now what you need to know is it's a fraction of the circumference. So if I go all the way around, now I'm not talking about the angle measure anymore, I'm talking about literally like if I was walking around this circle, or if I was pulling the crust off of this circle. That length, how much crust there is, or how much length there is, or what piece of the circumference we're looking at, that distance is called the arc length. So arc AB has both a length to it and it also has a measure to it. So we have arc measure and we have arc length. Again, we'll talk about those more later. Now, minor arc and major arc. So a minor arc, if I'm comparing the two, minor is exactly what it sounds like. It is smaller than a diameter. It measures less than 180 degrees. Versus a major arc is larger. Major sounds like bigger. Larger than a diameter, measures more than 180 degrees. So if I'm looking at my circle here, first of all, the diameter we said is XB. Okay, so if the diameter is XB, we know that the measure of arc XB, the measure of arc XB would be 180 degrees because XB, segment XB, is a diameter. So the measure of arc XB, the measure from here all the way over in degrees, is 180 degrees. So now if I have something smaller than that, smaller than 180 degrees, smaller than a diameter, that's called a minor arc. So for example, if I'm looking at arc AX, that's less than half of a circle. Okay, so that means that its measure is less than 180 degrees. So an example of a minor arc would be arc AX. Now, major arc. So it has to be something larger than 180 degrees. So I can't say that it's arc XB because that is 180 degrees. But if I said that it was arc XBA, that indicates that I'm starting at X, going all the way around to B, and continuing on to A. So here to here. Okay, stopping there, starting there. So that is a major arc because it's bigger than 180 degrees. Now, notice when I named that arc XBA, I used 3 letters rather than 2. Major arcs, you always will use 3 letters, and minor arcs, you will always use 2 letters to name. And the reason for that is if I called this major arc, which I just said is named XBA, if I called it XA, then how would you know whether I was talking about the one that I am talking about, starting here and going all the way around and ending here, or if I'm just talking about starting here and going this way and ending there? Okay, so the way that we distinguish between the two is that if it's 2 letters, then it's just the minor arc, and that would be just here to here. But if it's 3 letters, that means I have to start here, continue through to the next letter, and then keep going to the 3rd letter. Okay, so that's how we know the difference between which arcs we're talking about. Minor would be 2 letters, major would be 3. A sector. So a sector is formed by 2 radii of a central angle and the arc between their endpoints on the circle. Now that sounds very confusing, but let me go back to our diagram here. So if I have 2 radii like OA and OX, segments OA and OX, and I have the arc that's in between, in this case arc AX, this whole region here, if I shade it in, almost like a piece of pie or a piece of pizza, that whole region that I shaded is called the sector of the circle. And there's lots of sectors here in this circle. I just shaded one of them. But that region, the 2 radii, the arc in between, and everything in between, that is called a sector of the circle.